Hey, I'm James from Smoking Dad Barbecue, and you join me for my first ever offset smoker pulled pork. So as you can tell by the foil wrap, this Boston butt is already well on its way to becoming pulled pork because the cook started much earlier. In fact, yesterday when we prepared our pulled pork for today's smoke session on my Carlisle offset smoker by Smoke North, and I love lately going with the overnight dry brine. If you have the time to do this, a little simple step a day in advance, it makes a world of difference. It gives the salt time to penetrate thicker cuts of meat like brisket, pulled pork like we're doing today, or even larger steaks if you're doing a tomahawk ribeye or something like that. The overnight dry brine is an absolute game changer. So not only will it help enhance the natural flavor of whatever you're cooking, it's really going to help it retain more moisture throughout the cook. And so this isn't so much about the salt taste, but it's about maintaining what moisture we can to end up with a juicier, more tender product. And on pulled pork, that's exactly what you want. So let me take you back to yesterday, walk through the overnight dry brine and everything I did in advance to prep this Boston butt for going on the smoker early this morning. And I'll rejoin you and walk you through the game plan for today's cook. All right, we are ready to overnight dry brine our bone-in Boston butt. So like always, I'm going for a bit of a Tex-Mex pulled pork that we're gonna be serving in tacos. So like always, I'm gonna use my Texas style salt and pepper dry brine rub. If you haven't seen that, I'll put a chapter at the end of getting everything ready here. And if you've already seen that, just go ahead and skip to rejoin us. So the only difference from that is we'll also be adding in 2 tablespoons of dried oregano along with 2 teaspoons of cumin powder. We've got some mustard for our binder and a knife just to score the top of our fat cap. I'll take you fast forward while we get this ready for the overnight dry brine, where it'll hang on this rack in the refrigerator overnight. Okay, so now that we have our fat cap down to about 1/4 of an inch with the skin removed, let's go ahead and do a crosshatch so we can get some flavor profile down into our pulled pork. So that's going to give lots of surface area for our binder and our rub to get down inside. So let's start on the bottom and we'll finish on the presentation side. A little bit of mustard. Our salt and pepper rub with just a bit of paprika. That's the red color you see in there, but everything else is the same. I forgot to mention that earlier. I think there's a tablespoon of smoked paprika. Then our oregano and cumin mix. And then we'll rub, and I'm just going to push it down into the surface area that we've created here by scoring the top. So we're nearly ready. This looks ready to hit the refrigerator overnight for our overnight dry brine. I just want to tighten this back up a little bit like how the butcher had it. So I've got some butcher twine. I'll retruss it. I'll see you in the morning when it's time to fire it up. All right, that's ready to go. If you haven't seen it before, my favorite Texas style dry brine rub is mostly a bit of pepper, some salt, with that salt content actually split between 2, evenly between Diamond Crystal Kosher salt as well as Lowry's, and then add a little bit of garlic at the end for some good measure. But this in some cooks is just on the borderline of being a little bit too much salt, which is what I'm getting from the Lowry. So instead of doing 2 tablespoons of black pepper, a tablespoon of Diamond Crystal Kosher salt, and a tablespoon of Lowry's, we're going to break the tablespoons in the salt down into teaspoons. So 1 tablespoon is 3 teaspoons. So what I'm going to do is do 2 teaspoons of Lowry's and 4 teaspoons of Diamond Crystal Kosher salt, as that will help just reduce the saltiness a little bit while keeping some of those great flavors. The other thing that has made a huge difference is using something like this fresh cracked black pepper versus the pre-cracked stuff here that I'm using from Costco. The only problem with this is it's really slow, especially when we need something like 4 tablespoons. So I went and I finally got myself one of these. Let me show you the difference it makes. So even though I know the fresh stuff always tastes better than the pre-ground, when you need something like 4 tablespoons, getting enough pepper out of a traditional grinder just takes a long time. Like I haven't even made a dent here. That's maybe an eighth of what I need. So I got the Man Kitchen pepper cannon after Christmas. Let me show you the difference this makes at getting the volume of pepper we need quickly. So in elapsed time, that was just maybe about 30 seconds, and you can see we've got a full container of fresh cracked black pepper. And I wish there was such thing as smell-o-vision, because if we were just to take a whiff of what sort of peppercorn oils we're getting in the pre-ground stuff, I mean, you can tell it's pepper, and this is maybe great for a soup or adding to your eggs, but in comparison, knock your socks off. That's where you're reminded that pepper is actually a spice. And like I mentioned, I started small, and I actually took the time to grind that out a few times, and I was absolutely sold on the difference. But when I saw the pepper cannon can do that about 10 times quicker, I had to try it, and it is totally worth it for rubs like this. So this is definitely going to be something you'll see more of as we go forward, because the flavor impact here is significant. So let's get back to making up the rest of our rub. So since I'm actually cooking a couple other things, I'm going to, as I mentioned, double the rub. So instead of 2 tablespoons, I'm going to go for 4 of our fresh cracked black pepper here. Then we're going to want 2 tablespoons of our diamond crystal kosher salt. And now, since we're adding the ratio, instead of being 50-50, we're going to add a little bit extra of our diamond crystal kosher salt using a teaspoon. So since I'm doubling the recipe, it's going to be 2 teaspoons of diamond crystal kosher salt. Next, we're going to go 4 teaspoons of our Lowry's and 1 tablespoon of garlic. Mix that up well, and our salt and pepper rub is ready to go. Okay, so for the game plan for today's smoke session, now I already know from a couple cooks, including last weekend when I did a full packer brisket, my first on my brand new offset, is that the cooking characteristics are so different than what I'm used to. So we are getting way more convection air than what I'm used to. I'm used to cooking on a ceramic Kamado style grill, which retains a lot of energy. So that's giving me a couple different heat sources. I'm getting radiant heat from the ceramic that traps that, which I'm getting a little bit here. This is a 1/4-inch steel, and the cook chamber, you're going to 3/8 on the door, and it's double insulated on the bottom, or semi-insulated on the firebox. So I definitely am getting some of that residual heat, but not near the same degree in terms of what I'm used to from a ceramic grill. I'm not having to worry. One of the #1 problems with the heat underneath your food is burning. That problem is no more. So I don't have the conduction issue that I'm used to trying to manage around. And I am getting so much more convection airflow. But the net result of these different heat sources, they're all there just in different amounts, is cooks are taking a little bit longer than what I've gotten accustomed to. So the game plan for today is get our fire started just around 7 o'clock this morning, and I like to throw in some charcoal. I'm using Fogo because that tastes the most like wood to me, and that's just going to help quickly establish my coal bed. Throwing on a couple splits. I'm using splits, they're about wrist size. So this is maple, and that's about 8 to 10 inches. And so I'm going through one of these about every 30 to 40 minutes today, but I like to get a couple of those going, let the temperature shoot up beyond what I want. So I want to be cooking today around 250 degrees at the grate where the meat is actually sitting. And so I like to let it fly past that with a couple splits. And as it starts to die down, now we go to about a split every 30 minutes or so, and that's the game plan to maintain that all day. For the temperature that I want to plan, I like to do a little bit lower and slower. So that brisket, I think I got a little overzealous and was trying to rush and go a little bit too hot too fast. So I'm going to start this cook a little bit earlier, get the meat on the grill right around 7:30 so that I can maintain sort of a median average temperature of 250 degrees Fahrenheit for about 7 hours. Take me into early afternoon, when I then am going to wrap this completely and use a little bit of orange juice. Now we're going for a different style tonight. This is about Tex-Mex is what it's going to end up in for dinner. That's why I've gone with the slightly different rub and using orange juice versus apple cider vinegar or apple juice or something like that, or even bourbon that would go great on a traditional Texas style pulled pork. So once we got our fire going nice and hot using my Grill Blazer grill gun, as I mentioned earlier, game plan is just to keep adding a split and try and keep a plus 25, minus 25 temperature range. So if I want 250, when I throw in a brand new split, it might spike to 275, and then over the course of the next 30 to 40 minutes, that will dip down all the way to about 225 degrees. On this small sort of open right to the firebox, 60-gallon style offset, that's been the best I can manage without resorting to something like throwing in some charcoal to help try and neutralize that line and make it a little bit flatter. But I want to go for the full flavor experience here, so I'm only using splits in today's cook. Using the meter, I'm able to track and set an alarm, so I set that for 203 degrees. That's just so I can track the entire cook, but the game plan is somewhere around 170 degrees. Once my bark is set, I want to be able to wrap this in foil and add the juice. The other reason that I'm doing that is also from a work back schedule, and so I know in foil I can gain upwards of about 20 degrees Fahrenheit per hour. And if I want to be able to rest this for an hour to 2 hours before shredding into it for dinner, I'm also looking at where I'm at and when I need to get this cook done. So if I'm at 170 degrees and it's 3 o'clock in the afternoon and I want to have this for 6, that means if I want to rest it for at least 1 hour, it needs to be done by 5. So if I'm looking at my rate of progression going from 170 to 203 in about 2 hours, that's a little tight. So this is where the foil wrap can make up a significant amount of ground and still give me plenty of time for the rest. I used a little bit of spray as we were going on throughout the day just to help make sure there was nothing drying out, and that was just a mixture of water and apple cider vinegar. And other than that, it was pretty straightforward. Just add a log, and again, add a log, and keep repeating until you get me to this point when I think we're about ready to go take a look at our pulled pork and check it for probe feel. All right, let's take a look. I'm just using some Amazon cotton gloves and some black nitrile gloves so I get a bit of heat protection and food safe protection. In fact, I even have, I think, a save 35% on the nitrile gloves if you're looking for some. Oh, that is gorgeous. So we're looking here not so much for temperature, but for probe feel. We can see the bone is pulling right back nicely, so I think that's going to come out. But this should feel like we're going into room temperature butter. Let's drop in. Avoid the bone. Oh, that's good. As soon as I let go, that's just wanting to run through right there. So we're at 197. Let's try over here. I think I was close to the bone, 206. But again, that probe feel is just like maybe melted butter at this point. So I think we are done. I'm gonna take you fast forward while I get this off. I'm gonna wrap it back up, leave it out on a pan. I'm not gonna put that in the cooler right away, because if I wrap this with foil and put it in the cooler immediately coming off the grill, it will still be too warm and it'll carry over cook and maybe potentially overcook from where we're at right now. So wrap this up, set it aside, and put it in a cooler, let it rest for an hour. I'll rejoin you then for the taste test. Okay, we are ready to shred this, and even just transferring to the bowl, lifting it up is wanting to fall apart. This is so tender. So I'll take you fast forward while we shred this up, removing our rope as well. Nice clean pull of the bone. All right, time for my favorite part of the evening, the taste test. Let's dig in, see how we did. Wow. Have not added any sauce or anything. That's just straight shred right onto the plate. That's the best pulled pork I've ever made. Maybe even ever had. That is fantastic. So let me try and make sense of what's going on. So first, that juiciness that I mentioned from the salt brine, this is just rich with flavor, and that coating of that fat cap that we trimmed down to 1/4 inch and let render out. As that was collected after we put it into a foil pouch, we stopped losing that fat to the bottom of our smoker and into my drip pan. Instead, retain that in the foil. So when we mix that all together, it just coats everything with this lush, rich flavor. The next thing that I'm getting is that crunch and texture from our bark that has like this candy salty crunch to it that immediately dissipates into just awesome pork. Might as well be pork candy. And then the pork itself is the star of the show. This is just right on the money for tenderness and flavor. Smoke is awesome, right on the point. I'm blown away by how well this turned out. I can't wait to do a few more on this. So let me know down in the comments what you'd like to see next. But that's it for today. I'm James from Smoking Dad Barbecue signing off. And remember, don't be afraid, fire it up.